Good morning. Welcome back to my channel Karthik Knowledge Hub. It's been quite a long time that I am posting another video, which is like stay tuned. I'll be revealing it like what will be the topic on. Firstly, like I would like to introduce about myself. Like previously, like long back, I was working in TCS. Then I moved to Oracle, and now I am working in ServiceNow as a software engineer IC2. So you could see it from my description on the channel. So previously I worked on Oracle, TCS and Verizon, and I was interviewed at various FANG companies like Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, JPMC and Blue Yonder. And there are many other companies which I have not listed here, but the top ones are mentioned over here. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn and various other social media handles. So not taking much of your time, but let's start with today's video. Like if you are new to my channel, you can subscribe to my channel and get latest video updates on this channel. So this is my channel ID, which is Karthik Dev Hub, and this is my channel name Karthik Knowledge Hub. So today, like the agenda is on, I would be explaining on the part like many people have reached out to me like what are the most interview questions asked in Selenium and automation side from like top product based companies. Let's say it's ServiceNow or Apple or Amazon, anyone's it can be. So recently I have a good couple of interview experiences, and based on that I've created this video. To keep it to a short extent, let's get into the video first. And firstly, like let me just mirror my screen. Okay, hope my screen is visible. And now I already my channel description is available. So today I'll be just starting with top Selenium interview questions which are asked in product based companies. So if you are preparing for an any SDET or automation engineer role at product based company, let it be any company which is ServiceNow, Apple, Deloitte or any FANG, so this video is for you. And I have personally gone through such interview rounds where I've explained the Selenium questions with proper real-time examples, and today I'll walk you through such examples. So before we start, like uh, usually in interviews, like people just tend to answer kind of defined based answers, like let's say any kind of definitions or what are like just predefined. We tend to answer such questions in such phased answer manner. So let me be uh, explaining you with the real-time scenarios. So today, like I'll be like explaining you with some theoretical concepts as well. In latest, like in upcoming videos, I'll try to make it in practical way. Today, like let's start with one of the question which is most frequently asked in Selenium. So one that question is on. Okay, so let me just start with first question which is asked was on one sec. Okay, so it is on, hope my screen is visible, which is like driver dot close. And just a minute. Okay, yeah, so it is on driver dot close and driver dot quit. So this is the most frequently asked question which I have seen in many of the interviews. So I'll explain what is driver dot close. So basically driver dot close, why just I have given two differences, because I just wanted to keep this questions in such a way that these interviewers try to trick you with this kind of differences, and we are just following this kind of questions because it will be easy to explain in interviews as well. So first, like I'll be explaining like what is driver dot close. Driver dot close is nothing but whenever, like let's say when you are initializing any session, like let's say you are initializing web driver is equal to new Chrome driver session. So this is your initialization of driver. So when you initialize any Chrome driver and when you try to navigate to any certain URL like driver.get of google.com and you are particularly navigating into a certain website. Now I'm in a page where a certain tab is open, which is google.com, and now here I just want to close this current tab and I want to open another new tab. So what I will be performing is like driver.close. So what is the actual meaning of driver.close? So driver.close is just it closes the current tab or window which is in focus. So right now the session is alive and the focus is on this particular tab, and we are going to just close this particular window. But here is a trick to this question. So what is the trick? Like, as WebDriver session is still alive, you can still switch to another window and keep running your further executions. Like, let's say if I want to start with another kind of where driver.get of tcs.com, so I can move to another website and proceed with my another sequence of executions. So that is the major difference which is like I wanted to highlight. And the other one is like driver.quit, which is like this question, I mean this particular command, which is used to close all the windows and it destroys the WebDriver session too. So this is the major difference which I wanted to highlight, which is like driver.close is like it closes your current focused WebDriver session which is still active, but you just closes the current tab, or just if you want to close any current window that is in focus, that gets closed. But driver.quit is nothing but it closes all the windows which are in the session and it also destroys the WebDriver session. So where this is used in, I mean where I wanted to explain on the real life part also, like because that will be helpful in interviews. Let's say if you have a test that opens a new tab and does something, and if you want to come back to that particular session again, so you use close on that tab. So just the example I've given is on google.com, and if I close this tab and I just want to come back and start with another website which is tcs.com, I can go ahead with it. But if you want driver.quit, let's say if you are running a testng suite and you have a classes defined here, let's say a class is mentioned and you want to annotate with test steps as priority 1, and so basically we write in testng, right, which is before test or after test. So after test is nothing but when you try to tear down your suits. So tear down is nothing but you close all the sessions which are associated with your WebDriver, or let's say any of your test suits sessions. So I try to use driver.quit. So that is helpful when you want to completely exit from your all the test executions and you want to end the test. So that is where we use quit. But what I have seen people usually quit in middle of the test. That's why we get some kind of errors which are mostly seen like throws kind of a session error, which is like session not found. So people just tend to get confused between driver.close and driver.quit. So this is kind of error which is seen if you use quit in middle of your test execution. So I hope you are clear with this driver.quit and driver.close. So let's start with another question, which is on basically weights. So this is also most frequently asked question in any of the interviews. Like interviewer wants you to know what is implicit weight and explicit weight as well. Nowadays, like interviewers are very keen to know about fluent weights as well. So basically what is implicit weight? So what is implicit weight is nothing but you try to set it once and it applies to globally, and it applies globally. So what is the best example I could give? So let's say if you are on a session login window where you have a username and password and you try to click on submit button. So if I try to enter any username and password, and if I click on hit on submit button and I want to load that after the login page, I want to navigate to let's say a dashboard page. So this is the dashboard page and it takes some time to load. So now if I want to apply implicit weight on it, so I am going to enter username for some let's say I am just trying to enter for example driver dot send keys, and I'm entering the username. And if I am using driver dot send keys and I'm entering password, and I'm just trying to apply implicit weight on it, like for every individual weight driver dot manage dot timeouts. So this is the most of the interviewers like expect you to write complete syntax for weights, and people tend to fail writing this syntax because usually we just try to explain the scenario as well, the definition of any weights, but they expect you to write whole syntax for implicit weights and explicit weight. So let's say implicit weight and you write duration of seconds, let's say duration of seconds, and this is, let's say you're giving 10 seconds. So now this particular session, wherever if you want to like wherever there is a action performed, like you're telling WebDriver before, like if you want to wait up to some certain seconds, so wherever there is action between the driver happening, so it applies globally to all the weight. So this is kind of increasing your load time as well, your performance also decreases because there is no need of waiting for 5 seconds to enter username. There is no need of entering I mean there is no need of waiting 5 seconds to enter a password and click on a submit button. So this is just causing an unnecessary delay for execution as well. So people nowadays are not preferring implicit weight, and this is also kind of deprecated now. This is the recent update which I wanted to provide, like on implicit weights, like it is kind of deprecated as well. And since implicit weight is like you set it once, it applies globally. You're telling WebDriver before throwing such no such element exception, you want to wait it up to x seconds. Like you want to wait, let's say I want before, like whenever you don't find any element, so we generally get certain exceptions in Selenium, like no such element exception. This is one of the exception which you can highlight in your interviews. And so before throwing this an error, you apply an implicit weight. So this is simple but kind of dangerous on dynamic apps, like it because it applies to every single find element call. Obviously we'll try to do a find element on every single call, right? Any single action you do, find element by id or find element by xpath or any kind of css selector, so you're just waiting for certain amount of time, and which is causing a delay also, so it can slow your entire suite down silently. Now the alternative to this is explicit wait. So this is mostly used in industries and any frameworks because it is having much of functionalities, I could say. I mean, it offers wide variety of functionalities. Like being specific about explicit wait, I would like to explain on let's say the syntax for explicit wait. I will highlight it here. So explicit wait is nothing but like you provide a WebDriver wait and you do new WebDriver wait and you provide driver with a session wait time of x seconds, which is 10 or 15, let's say anything you want, x seconds. And now the major uh, wide variety functionality which I was talking about, like you want to uh, wait for certain condition to be met, then only execute this action command. Let's say wait until expected conditions visibility of element located by .id of submit button. So this is like you are waiting for a condition like to be visible of that element which is located by an id submit button. So this is clearly written that it is waiting for the submit button to appear and then it hits on submit button. So this is like kind of explicit wait which is like applied to Angular driven elements which loads asynchronously, and it also kind of saves from a different flaky test which is like on dynamic XPaths. So next, talking about fluent wait. One sec, I think so. 1 minute, let me charge my book. So next I'll be talking about fluent waits. Okay, I think it is working now. So what we tend to get confused is like on interviews, like people tend to fail to answer what is fluent wait, and people also tend to write syntax what how fluent wait is described. So I'll be explaining like it is kind of advanced version of your explicit wait in Selenium, which kind of gives full control over how long the wait should be and how long the frequent I mean how frequently you can check for the condition. So let's say if I want to wait for certain condition. So for example, I would give syntax for fluent wait. So fluent wait syntax is this, where you are wait and you are waiting for WebDriver session. One sec, just make it scroll up a bit. Okay. So you are waiting for WebDriver to wait. You are initializing your WebDriver session with wait as equal to new fluent wait, and you write driver, which is the session getting width. Now I'll be adding some preconditions which are to be met so that fluent wait is possible. Okay, so basically what are those preconditions? Like let's say width, I think there is some delay in this. Okay, so with timeout of duration of seconds. So yeah, you are just providing a number of seconds, which is like maximum wait time, which will be adding here first condition, first precondition, what I would say. And the next one is like you are trying to add a polling period. So it tries to poll like for every second, like whatever seconds you justify, like X seconds. So here also you write duration of second. So and at the end, like one more precondition which I would be checking, like I'll this is an like additional feature which Fluent provides, like ignoring the exceptions. Like the major element I mean the major exception we found is no such element exception. So in one of my interview in EPAM, I guess, they asked me like, uh, basically they asked me the syntax of fluent weight, and they told like, what is the real-time example which you can give for fluent weight? So one real-time example which I can give is like waiting for the search result to appear is one of the real-time example which I can tell you. So you kind of tell that to waiting for particular search result to appear on the screen, and you want to poll it for frequently till that search result appears on your screen. You try to poll it for every X seconds. So that can be the best example which you can give. Searching for some result to appear on screen. You can best give an example of, let's say, of your results website. You try to enter your hall ticket number, and you try to enter your date of birth and click on submit, and you just try to reload the screen for every X seconds until you see the results tab to appear. So that is one of the best example of fluent which I would give as a part of real time. So I hope you are clear with these three weights, like fluent weight, explicit weight, and implicit weight, and where to use. So explicit weight, like you can control lot of flaky tests, and you can also have the action executed before any precondition is met, like visibility of element located. Not only visibility of element located, you can also wait for certain conditions to be met. Like there are different methods on explicit wait which you can get it from the documentation of Selenium website. So other locator strategy which I would be example is like, this was one of the most frequent question asked in interview, like which locator strategy is most reliable? Usually people tend to answer very bluntly, like without any example here. So this one comes in every product based company to this question, like usually when your framework you are developing, what is the kind of locator strategy you follow which is most reliable and accurate? So people bluntly say, like, I would go with ID. So ID is kind of everyone is just used to it, and because ID is having a unique value, and you try to bluntly answer that ID is one of the reliable strategy. But frankly speaking, during my development of automation frameworks, I've never relied on one particular locator strategy. So that is ID sometimes changes with respect to different when you're working in a virtual environment, or let's say when you are working in different instances which is having like different cloud instances. So there, like, the ID is kind of changing for every instance, so it cannot be same in different instances, and there might be fluctuating also. So I won't say ID would be the best reliable locator strategy. And people also tend to answer the one more is like XPath is most powerful. And also people tend to answer CSS, which is a kind of most sweet spot, like people tend to give the answers. But what actually impresses interviewers is like knowing how you tell about the real world limitations. That helps in the interviews. Like for example, I would give, uh, in ServiceNow, like IDs are often auto generated and they are dynamic, as I mentioned, because ServiceNow is having their own cloud instances, and IDs are kind of often auto generated and dynamic. Also in my previous company where I worked for, there I was using cloud instances, cloud environments where we were giving separate virtual environments. There also ID was dynamic, and it was frequently changing. So we cannot rely on ID or XPath or CSS, just like saying blunt answers on like I'll be going with this locator strategy. So I'll tell you like how to answer this question in interviews. So you can tell that I won't be relying on a specific locator strategy I won't be relying on one specific locator strategy. I would be telling that based on the conditions or based on the situation, I would be using my different locator strategy. Let's say CSS selectors are one of the best kind of locator strategy for dynamic apps because they are kind of faster in XPath also, and they work well with class-based structures. So XPath is also one of the superpower which you can match by text. Like for example, I would say there is a button with text as submit. So this is XPath strategy which I follow for dynamic apps. And for CSS, I think there are different strategies we can for ID we use, for dot we use for class. And what CSS can't do here is it cannot have this dynamic strategy which you can apply here. So XPath is having this kind of advantage where you can tell interviewers that I use XPath for such dynamic handling of inputs. I can give contains, I can do starts with. So there are different methods in the dynamic strategy where you can apply in XPath. But CS is fast bit compared to XPaths, but it can be used when you want to navigate from your parent class to root, from the root class to your child class, from the parent dev element to child dev element. So there CSS is kind of faster compared to different locator strategies which are provided. So another thing is like on IDs is like straightforward. The another thing is I would like to mention like on Shadow DOM, like ServiceNow's next experience UI uses web components and standard locators which cannot reach inside them. So you need JavaScript executor to access those shadow root first. So this JavaScript executor DOMs also can be used here. Basically when you want to access any kind of shadow DOMs. So on the part of shadow DOM, I'll explain in the next video, but let's keep it short here. So first question was on, I was explaining on driver.close and driver.quit, then waits, and then I moved on to locator strategy, which is reliable. I explained the differences on like XPaths, how we use, and for CSS, how we use. ID is like common, and there are other XPaths also by we can use by name, and by class also we can use. So there are other things also you can use it, but you have to explain some real-time answers to be reliable in the interview. Next, final thing I would like to discuss on, like this is one of the question which is asked, like people like in interviews, like they tend to ask like what are the exceptions you have encountered in your day-to-day Selenium automation. And one of the question which I came across is like on stale element reference exception. This is one of the exception which is like widely encountered while handling DOM elements. So you have a DOM and your you generally face these exceptions like when DOM refreshes after you have already fetched an web element for the reference. Let's say if you have fetched, there is a div tag and you have like multiple div tags here with child span and div. Now this is a structured DOM which you are using and you want to reference to a particular span ID. Let's say if I want to reference like to this span ID of unique value, I'm referencing to this span ID web element. And now if I refresh this DOM, let's say if this particular div tag eliminates and still our kind of, let's say if I am navigating to, sorry, let me give the best example here. Now for example, if I give div and if I give some locator strategy with following tag and I provide the span to this. So because it is having a structured DOM reference which is pointing from the div element, and if I try when I refresh this DOM element and this DOM gets changed and it is still referencing to that span ID, we get this particular exception which is stale element reference exception, because you have already fetched that web element reference and the element is still holding is now pointing to the destroyed node. So there are three situations where this it happens, like when you are navigating to a different page, or the other situation is like JavaScript kind of re-renders the component or update the, I mean it update rebuilds the DOM. This is one of the situation, and the one situation which I've explained on the structured DOM. So this is one of the situation, because here what the fix is like, refetch the element instead of reusing the cached reference. So best way to is to retry that, or the even cleaner thing I can tell you that use expected conditions dot refreshed inside your explicit wait. So what is that, like I'd be providing the syntax expected conditions dot refreshed. So this thing you can use it in explicit wait, which I've already mentioned you earlier. So in explicit wait you have different methods which you can take advantage and use it in your uh, conditions as well, like in certain conditions where you want to not to encounter these exceptions, like no such element exception, stale element reference exception. So these exceptions can help in interviews to answer very smartly. Next thing is like what should we not do here in these scenarios, like bluntly people try tend to just add thread dot sleep, which is not encouraged, because thread dot sleep is just like you're sleeping your thread for a certain amount of time. It does not kind of wait for that particular thing, like let's say before the interaction happens you just provide thread dot sleep. That kind of mask the problem and it does not fix actually. And this is the way like interviewers want you to get some smart answers. That's the reason I have explained you earlier about explicit wait, where you can use this condition to answer it smartly. So these are the four questions which today I'll be wrapping up just on a short note, because I came up with some questions which I can explain it today, keeping it short. But in upcoming videos, I'll just come up with different topics on Java questions as well, different design patterns which are asked in Microsoft and Apple. So I can also provide some coding questions also. So I'll just be updating different questions in upcoming videos. So stay tuned and also do subscribe my channel, which is Karthik Knowledge Hub, and to get latest updates. So I think that's all from my end. If you have still any questions on this part, you can just put it in comment section and I'll be glad to answer that. Thank you and bye bye for today.